Good morning, folks. We'll just give everyone 1 minute to load in. Great. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this special summer edition of the FCM Collective webinar series. My name is Evan Clark, and I'm the Manager of Partnerships and Sponsorships with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Our session today is entitled Canada Post Transformation and is presented in partnership with Canada Post. We welcome this dialogue and conversation about the future of mail delivery in Canada, recognizing that Canada Post is facing tremendous financial challenges. Canada Post is an integral part of community economic development, growth, and sustainability across the country. Canadian families, businesses rely on Canada Post for accessible mail and parcel delivery, while our municipal leaders leverage its services to communicate with residents, organizations, and businesses alike. For these reasons, amongst many others, today's conversation is of particular relevance to FCM's members, and we're glad to offer this platform to host it. As FCM moves forward with our commitment to reconciliation, I want to acknowledge that FCM's head office is located on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. As an organization, FCM endeavors to unlearn colonial mindsets and practices, grow in knowledge, and adapt our ways of working. As we continue to build meaningful relationships, we recognize the historic and ongoing contributions of Indigenous peoples and honor their leadership and partnership in shaping and strengthening communities across the country. I welcome you to acknowledge the land you are joining us from in the chat if you would wish. Before I turn things over to the experts, I have a few housekeeping items to mention. L'interprétation simultanée est disponible pour notre session aujourd'hui. Pour accéder à l'audio en français, il faut simplement cliquer la petite icône du globe au bas de l'écran vers la droite et sélectionner le français. We have one French-speaking guest on today's webinar, so please ensure you select the appropriate language for interpretation. If you do not select a language, you will hear live audio in English. Je vous donne quelques secondes pour faire le choix de langue. Give you a second to pick your language. We will also be showing presentation slides in both French and English today. You can select the appropriate language at the you can select the appropriate language tab at the top of your screen. Alors, nous allons aussi présenter les diapos en français et en anglais, et vous pouvez sélectionner la langue des diapos en haut. On our last webinar, a few participants reported an echo. If you're hearing an echo, please double check that you do not have the webinar opened in a web browser or a second Zoom tab. If you'd like to ask a question today, please use the Q&A pane at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom platform. We plan to leave ample time for questions or comments and contributions to the conversation, and we hope to do that towards the end of the session. So as things come to mind, please put them in the chat. It does sort of create a queue order, so first comes, first served. And finally, please note this session is being recorded and will be available on demand on FCM's website. Now we'll do a quick round of introductions for today's guests. First, we welcome Alexandre Brisson, Chief Operating Officer for Canada Post. Alexandre leads all operational aspects of Canada Post business, including plants, delivery, engineering, network, and real estate. He also advances Canada Post's transformation by prioritizing the safety and well-being of employees and customers and implementing operational changes to better meet the evolving needs and expectations of all Canadians. Alexandre is a seasoned executive with more than 20 years of experience in strategy, business transformation, process optimization, and program delivery. His previous role as Vice President of Engineering at Canada Post, in that role, he oversaw the execution of capital investment projects to increase parcel capacity and improve service while reducing operational costs. He has also served as Vice President of Business Transformation. We're also joined by John Hamilton, Vice President of Communications and Stakeholder Engagement for Canada Post. John leads the development and execution of strategic communications to key internal and external audiences to enhance business results, corporate brand, and other important company priorities, such as safety. He works closely with the President and CEO and other senior leaders to provide communications advice and guidance on corporate initiatives and issues management. Since joining Canada Post as general manager in 2009, John has played a key role in the creation and implementation of Canada Post's corporate communications amid transformational change. He serves as a senior spokesperson and leads the strategic departments within the company's communications team. Joining us from out west is Trish Mendewar, councillor for the city of Coquitlam, BC. Councillor Mendewar is in her second term and has built a reputation as a respected leader with extensive experience advancing strong, resilient communities across Canada. She's the immediate past president of the Union of BC Municipalities, having served 2 terms on its executive and previously served on the board of directors for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. In that time, she served as chair of FCM's Social and Economic Development Committee. Trish has also served on more than 25 boards spanning municipal, provincial, national, and private organizations. She's a sought-after speaker, an author, and a recipient of the King Charles Coronation Medal and the BC Business Women of the Year Award. Nous souhaitons aussi un bienvenue à Normand Saint-Amour, maire de la ville de Chute-Saint-Philippe. En poste depuis 16 ans, maire Saint-Amour souhaite poursuivre son implication en mettre à l'avant des projets qui touchent à la fois la gestion municipale, la sécurité, l'environnement et la qualité de vie des citoyens. Parmi ses priorités, maire Saint-Amour insiste d'abord sur l'importance de maintenir la cohésion et l'efficacité de l'équipe municipale qui regroupe les employés et en plus la population. Finally, please allow me to introduce our moderator for today's session. Rachel Rizzuto is FCM's Northern and Rural Policy Advisor. Rachel brings over a decade of strong research and policy expertise focused on small communities, and she supports rural and northern communities from coast to coast to coast through targeted policy research and development. Over to you to get things going today, Rachel.
Thanks, Evan. I think we've all heard enough from you. So to get started, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of FCM's collective webinar series, where we bring together municipal leaders and partners to explore some of the most pressing issues facing communities across Canada. This session is focused on the future of Canada Post. For municipalities, Canada Post is more than a mail delivery service. It is a part of the social and economic infrastructure that helps connect residents, businesses, and communities from coast to coast to coast. This is particularly true in rural, remote, and northern communities where postal services play an outsized role in daily life. At the same time, Canada Post has been very clear that it faces significant financial and operational pressures and that change is necessary to ensure it can continue serving Canadians into the future. Today's discussion comes at a pivotal moment as Canada Post advances a transformation plan that includes changes to delivery models, its retail network, and how services are provided across the country. These changes have generated important conversations within the municipal sector. Local governments are asking practical questions about community mailboxes, accessibility, municipal planning, cost, service levels, public consultation, and the future role of post offices in their communities. FCM has consistently advocated that municipalities must be meaningfully engaged in decisions that affect local operations and residents, and to support postal services in small communities. Those questions are legitimate. They reflect the responsibility municipal leaders have to protect the interests of their communities. Today's conversation is about bringing the right people together to better understand the challenges, identify opportunities, and explore how municipalities and Canada Post can continue working together to ensure Canadians continue to receive reliable, accessible, and sustainable postal services. After all, both municipalities and Canada Post share a common goal: serving Canadians and helping communities thrive. We want municipal leaders to leave with a clear understanding of what changes may be coming, what questions still need answers and where there may be opportunities for further partnership and collaboration. We also hope Canada Post leaves with a deeper appreciation of the realities municipalities face as these changes unfold on the ground. With that, let's begin by hearing directly from Canada Post about why transformation is underway, what it means for communities, and how they envision working with municipalities throughout this process. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Bonjour tout le monde. Good day, everyone, and thank you for giving us some of your time during the summer. Merci pour l'occasion de vous parler de notre transformation. More than that, we're looking forward to your questions, and we're also looking to the feedback that you have, because you have a big role to play in the transformation and helping us guide this and make sure that we are serving your citizens in the best way possible. I'll walk through a bit of a background, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague Alex, who will talk a bit more about the transformation, and then we'll get right to your questions. So if we want to move to the next slide, please. Canada Post, and as municipal leaders, you would understand this. We have a mandate that is, it's a dual mandate. It is to serve all Canadians, so serve all citizens, and to do so in a financially sustainable way. Running a municipality is very much the same. You have to balance the budget. I'll explain as to how that has kind of fallen out of balance in the last few years. But our mandate is serve all Canadians, and we understand, and Rachel, pointed out what we believe wholeheartedly, that we're important in urban centers, but the farther you get away from the urban centers, and I've lived in different areas of the country, we become more and more important, and we fully understand that. And part of our transformation is to help rebalance that. But I'll let Alex explain that more in just a few minutes. Next slide, please. No surprises here, but we are huge on a national scale. We have over 60,000 employees. In Canada, there are 17 million addresses, and we're adding to them every day. Every new development that you add is, for us, new addresses to serve, and we've been working together with municipalities for years to do that. We have right now nearly 5,800 post office locations. That is more than McDonald's and Tim Hortons combined. Obviously, we're looking at modernizing that, but we'll talk more about that in the future. And then, we serve Canada with 22 processing plants and 423 depots. So we are everywhere. Next slide, please. So, how did we get to the situation that we're in today? Well, it's been a slow slide. 2006 was peak letter mail. That was when Canadians sent, the most mail that they had sent, and it's been on the decline for the last 20 years as Canadians have been, doing more and more things digitally. As municipal leaders, you've been transferring services, online and doing everything you can, because we do so much on our phone these days. So, 2006, we delivered 5.5 billion letters. Last year, that was 2 billion. But we're still built for a mail-based world, and I'll explain that in a moment. We are a big parcel delivery company as well. But since COVID, Canadians across the country, doesn't matter where you live, have become bigger and bigger users of e-commerce. That has meant competition has come into that area. So we are one of many players. And obviously, with our labor troubles over the last few years, we have lost a lot of market share, but we're looking to grow that. And then if you just look at that growing chart in the middle of the slide, that's the number of addresses. So every new development that you approve, and we're looking to solve the housing crisis. For us, that's a new address to deliver. But as you can see, our revenues with mail and parcels has been on the decline, while our costs to serve have been going up. So our mandate has really kind of fallen out of balance. During that time too, and this is part of the transformation now, governments had put in place regulations and restrictions that meant we couldn't really make the changes that are necessary. And when you're in a service industry and you're the people that you serve are changing the way you use you and the expectations that they have of you, and you can't make those changes to keep up, then they're going to look elsewhere. They're going to use your service elsewhere, and you're going to get into trouble. You know that just as much as we do. We are now, following the government's announcement last year, looking to kind of reestablish that, but do it in a thoughtful way. This isn't going to be done overnight. It's going to be taking time. So next slide, please. And this is probably not a surprise to anyone. We've hit that tipping point where we need to make changes. So we've lost $1.5 billion last year. A lot of that was everything that I just explained. Added on top of that, the uncertainty of the labor situation as we were negotiating with our largest union. And thankfully, we now have new collective agreements that have been ratified by the members. But when you're in the shipping business and you can't provide certainty, it's tough to grow the business, and you can see that. But we need to make changes. We are at a point where we are not self-sustainable. We want to return to that. But that means that the government has had to help us keep the lights on, and we're doing just that from an operational perspective. And we want to turn this place around because we know how important this service is to Canadians, and we need to get this right. But we need to find a way to make Canada Post more in line with what Canadians are looking for in communities across the country today. So with that, I'll turn things over with the next slide to my colleague Alex.
Thank you, John. Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Alexandre Brisson, je suis le chef de l'exploitation. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi de prendre du temps aujourd'hui puis de partager cette session-là avec vous tous. Le but, c'est vraiment d'entendre votre feedback, puisqu'on est au tout début de la transformation des postes. Donc, c'est un moment qui est important chez Post Canada. C'est un moment qui est important dans le service qu'on offre à tous les Canadiens. Puis, puisqu'on est au début, ben on veut entendre le feedback, on veut avoir ces discussions-là. Donc, c'est super important. Donc, j'ai hâte d'entendre vos questions un petit peu plus tard dans le meeting. Donc, on entame aujourd'hui la transformation des postes. C'est un moment qui est tournant. On a eu beaucoup d'événements qui sont significatifs dans les derniers mois. Un de ceux-là était certainement la conclusion de nos négociations avec notre plus grand syndicat, le syndicat des facteurs et factrices qu'on a au Canada. Ça a été un processus qui clairement a été ardu, mais on est très heureux du résultat qu'on a eu. C'est une entente qui est signée par nos employés conjointement. C'est une entente qui a été supportée. C'est une entente qui est sur 5 ans. Donc, ça nous donne beaucoup de stabilité dans les prochaines années, ce qui va favoriser notre service aux citoyens, puis qui va favoriser la possibilité de transformer les postes d'une façon ordonnée. Donc, pour nous, c'est vraiment un jalon qui est important. On a eu aussi, à la fin de l'année dernière, le gouvernement, clairement, voyant les pertes de Post Canada, clairement nous a donné la directive de commencer la transformation des postes, de regarder tout ce qu'on fait au poste pour finalement moderniser. Ça fait plusieurs années qu'on n'a pas changé, autant la façon qu'on travaille que le service qu'on offre à la population. Donc, on a mis ça en branle aussi. Prochaine slide, s'il vous plaît. Je vous parle un peu des grands piliers de cette transformation-là. Le premier étant l'installation des boîtes postales communautaires. Première chose que je vous dirais sur les boîtes postales communautaires, c'est pas un concept qui est nouveau. On installe depuis des décennies maintenant, partout au Canada, les boîtes postales communautaires. Donc, c'est quelque chose qui existe dans notre paysage depuis bien longtemps maintenant. On n'a vraiment jamais arrêté d'en faire. Tous les nouveaux développements là, dans les derniers 10-15 années ont reçu directement de boîtes postales communautaires. Donc, c'est pas un nouveau programme qu'on met de l'avant, c'est quelque chose qu'on continue simplement. Je vous dirais, 3/4 de la population canadienne est maintenant desservie par un mode de livraison centralisé. Donc, c'est quelque chose qui est quand même bien établi aujourd'hui. La transformation va compléter simplement ce travail-là. Le deuxième axe, c'est de regarder tout notre réseau de bureaux de poste. C'est un réseau qui a été fixe pendant très longtemps. Et on sait très bien que la géographie canadienne, que la démographie canadienne a évolué dans les 30 dernières années. Donc, on est rendu à un point maintenant où on regarde ce réseau-là, puis on veut s'assurer de le moderniser. Puis le moderniser, ça veut dire d'ajuster notre offre de service à la demande réelle de la population. Puis ça veut dire aussi que la modernisation, on sait que les gens maintenant veulent consommer plus de libre-service, par exemple. Donc l'offre de service elle-même doit être modernisée. C'est un pilier important de notre transformation. Je voudrais dire à ce point-ci que c'est pas un acte de réduction du service. Le service, ça demeure au cœur de Post Canada. Puis je vais même vous donner en cours de route peut-être des exemples qui vont pointer vers plus de services et non moins. Troisième pilier, qui est la mise à jour de nos normes de livraison de la poste-lettre. On a vu avec John qu'il y a une diminution significative des volumes de poste-lettres. On doit donc s'adapter à ça. On a, je ne sais pas si vous saviez, mais on a des normes, des standards de livraison, des standards de performance qui sont extrêmement restrictifs pour la livraison de la poste-lettre. Donc, d'un océan à l'autre, on a 4 jours pour livrer une lettre. Ce qui est bien, mais ce que ça nous force à faire, par contre, c'est de mettre, par exemple, le courrier sur des avions. Mettre du courrier sur des avions, c'est extrêmement dispendieux. Mettre du courrier sur des avions, c'est aussi, d'un point de vue environnemental, pas nécessairement la meilleure solution. Donc, on est en train de regarder à moderniser ce composant-là aussi. Et puis, le quatrième pôle qui est très, très important, c'est la croissance des postes. Donc, on veut compétitionner dans le monde de colis, on veut grandir notre part de marché des colis. Puis on veut aussi offrir des solutions qui sont basées sur la technologie, livraison le week-end. Donc vous allez voir aussi une augmentation du type de service que Post Canada va donner à la population. Non seulement juste un ajustement de ce qu'on a, mais vous allez voir un visage peut-être plus moderne dans les prochaines années de Post Canada. Prochaine slide, s'il vous plaît. Je pense qu'aujourd'hui, c'est important de souligner ça à très, très grands traits, qu'on est au tout début de cette transformation-là. Et c'est là qu'on veut vraiment prendre le temps de vous écouter. On veut prendre le temps d'ouvrir les canaux de communication, puis d'aller de l'avant ensemble. Vous devez voir la transformation des postes, qui est quelque chose qui va prendre quand même plusieurs années. Là. Donc, c'est pas comme si là, demain matin, ça allait changer dans votre quartier. On a du temps pour se parler, on a du temps pour planifier ensemble. Puis l'engagement municipal, c'est au cœur de ce qu'on fait. Donc, on a des équipes dédiées à Post Canada à communiquer clairement, mais à s'engager au niveau municipal pour avoir cette discussion-là constructive, pour guider nos actions futures. Prochaine slide. Mais si je veux prendre le temps, 2 secondes, c'est quelque chose qu'on entend beaucoup de la population en général, qui est très, très important pour nous. Il n'y a personne qui sera laissé derrière dans cette conversion-là aux boîtes postales communautaires. Comme je le disais plus tôt, c'est quelque chose qu'on fait depuis bien, bien, bien longtemps. Puis on a maintenant les bénéfices de quand même beaucoup d'expérience, beaucoup de feedback et de rétroaction qu'on a eu dans les dernières années autour des boîtes postales communautaires. On a un programme de mesures d'adaptation qui est vraiment important, qui est bien, qui a les ressources nécessaires pour rencontrer la demande. Puis, ce que ça veut dire, ça, c'est que si vous avez des limitations physiques, par exemple, ou des enjeux de mobilité, bien, on a des solutions de rechange. On a une équipe qui s'occupe de ça. Vous avez simplement à contacter Post Canada. Et puis, après ça, bien, on est capable de vous aider à trouver les meilleurs compromis possibles. Puis les compromis peuvent être de toutes sortes de nature. Si vous avez des problèmes à aller, par exemple, chercher votre poste à l'intérieur du contenant, bien, on peut avoir un petit plateau qui glisse et qui sort. Donc, ça vous empêche d'avoir à aller chercher votre poste à l'intérieur du compartiment. Si vous avez des problèmes de motricité fine, on voit sur la photo qu'il y a une clé qui est beaucoup plus grosse, beaucoup plus facile à manipuler. Donc, il y a tout ce genre d'adaptation-là qui existe déjà, qui fonctionne très, très bien d'ailleurs. Et ça va jusqu'à si vous êtes absolument incapable de vous rendre à la boîte postale communautaire, bien, il y a aussi des moyens de livrer, continuer à livrer à la maison 1 fois par semaine. Donc, il y a toute une panoplie d'adaptations qui sont possibles, qui sont utilisées déjà. On a 17 000 foyers d'ailleurs qui utilisent ces mesures d'adaptation-là. Prochaine slide. Je vous laisse donc sur un peu les principes de notre transformation. Je voudrais réitérer le fait que c'est pas parce qu'on révise nos activités qu'on diminue le service. En révisant nos activités, on est capable de libérer des ressources. Je vous donne un exemple. On a libéré des ressources récemment en analysant la façon qu'on travaille. On a libéré des camions. Ces camions-là ont été redéployés dans le monde rural, ce qui en fait améliore le service dans le monde rural. C'est quelque chose qu'on veut continuer à faire. Donc, un rebalancement de nos services, de nos efforts. C'est quelque chose qui fait partie de notre transformation. On veut prendre le temps, on veut être transparent, on veut vous écouter. puis on veut modifier la façon qu'on fait les choses pour que ça fonctionne pour tous. Puis on a le temps devant nous pour faire cette transformation-là. Donc, on vous laisse sur ce message-là. And I think at this point, I'll leave it at that, and I'll turn it back to our moderator, Rachel. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you very much. All right, so we will now get started into the panel roundtable discussion. So I will, oh, perfect. And then, so we have everyone here. All right, so I'll start off with very kind of a broad question and to everyone. So post offices, as we know, considered essential to the life of a community, particularly in small and rural communities. If you're modernizing your network, how will you ensure that smaller communities do not lose something that they consider a critical piece of infrastructure? So I'll throw it over to John and Alexandre, and then I'd like to pass it to Mayor Saint-Amour to talk about the importance of the rural post office in your community. So John, Alexandre, please.
Sure, thanks. I'll start on that one. First off, I just want to ensure that everybody understands that we understand the important role we play in rural, remote, northern, Indigenous communities. And it's our goal to maintain and protect those services, understanding the important role that we play. You know, we are still working with the government, but a lot of that is just ensuring that we can be clear in setting the expectations so that Canadians understand what exactly that means. But if you take a step back for a minute and look at what we are looking at, you know, I talked about we have, 5,800 post offices. There's areas of the country, because we haven't been able to make changes over the last 3 decades, we are overserved. If you do go into Google search and say Canada Post near me and it lights up with a whole bunch of red dots, that's where we really need to focus, because we are overserved in their post offices that just aren't getting a lot of traffic. As you move out to those rural communities and remote and all of that, obviously we want to ensure that we protect that service and maintain it, and ensure that we can provide a balance. And at the same time, because we have to maintain these 5,800 post offices and have been doing it for years, it means that we don't have a lot of resources, financial resources. So the money is spread out too thin. So some of those, and if you're in a rural community or remote community, the hours aren't great at some of the post offices you have, or some of the services we've had been spread thin. So we want to be able to invest. Urban is always going to be important to us. But if you can go to a Pharmaprix or a Jean Coutu or a Shoppers Drug Mart, and we have a corporate location very close nearby, then we need to look at that and say, well, we're overserved here. And then let's look at where we are in areas where we are not providing the service, or we can enhance it, or at least say that we need to protect. So we're working with the government on that. There's no announcement coming, immediately, but I can tell you that we are very much working on that, and then that will be shared, and there will be an opportunity for consultation.
Thank you very much. Alexandre, is there anything you wanted to add from yourself? Okay, perfect. So Mayor Saint-Amour, based off of what John was telling us, can you give us a sense from your community's perspective how the role of the post office, whether it be to community residents in general and the municipal government?
Bien, c'est sûr que pour notre communauté, notre municipalité, toutes les municipalités rurales, il faut comprendre que les distances, c'est un défi entre nous pour avoir accès aux services. Donc, les citoyens, des fois, peuvent avoir à faire 45 ou 45 minutes ou 1 heure pour avoir accès à une pharmacie, pour avoir accès à différents services. Donc, le bureau de poste, qui est un service de proximité, peut avoir des opportunités, peut-être dans la livraison de médicaments, des choses comme ça. Donc, ça pourrait être une belle opportunité d'avoir ces liaisons-là, parce que c'est un service qui est sécurisé. Pour nos colis, les colis, nous, c'est un service qui est super important. Et quand que les livraisons viennent de l'extérieur de la région, souvent, ils n'arrivent pas à la bonne porte. Ils arrivent même des fois pas du tout. Et donc, Post Canada, eux, connaissent nos région, connaissent nos rues, connaissent nos adresses. Donc, c'est quelque chose qui est super important d'avoir le service de livraison de colis qui serait, voire même augmenté. Au niveau du nombre de casiers postal pour les colis, souvent ils sont pleins, puis tu sais, on reçoit nos colis par Poste Canada, ils viennent les livrer à la maison, mais ça pourrait être simplement d'augmenter le nombre de casiers postales dans nos, où est-ce qu'il y a nos boîtes à lettres, là, nos boîtes à lettres regroupées. Il faut faire attention aussi, les boîtes à lettres, des fois, ils sont loin des résidences. Et pour les gens avec des mobilités
Mhm.
réduites, ça devient plus difficile. Et quand que les gens ont à faire un détour, il faut comprendre qu'on fait souvent 30 minutes pour aller travailler, 30 minutes revenir chez nous, et ça, c'est en termes de kilomètres, là. Donc, c'est un 30-40 kilomètres pour aller travailler, et 30-40. Donc, les gens, quand ils ont à faire un détour de 2 3 4 kilomètres pour aller à leur boîte postale, c'est vraiment, les gens, ils vont pas. Ils vont vraiment tu sais, ils vont y aller une fois ou deux fois par semaine, des fois une fois par 2 semaines. Et là, la boîte postale devient très, très remplie, compactée parce que c'est un détour, mais si on met la boîte postale entre le travail et la résidence, eh bien là, les gens ils vont arrêter de façon régulière presque à tous les jours et ça ne devient pas un problème d'avoir une compaction. Donc ça, c'est des choses importantes à regarder. Donc c'est surtout comment je te dirais, la sécurité des colis. Parce qu'au niveau des compétiteurs, là, je ne veux pas les nommer, mais souvent les colis sont, ils ne se rendent pas ou sinon ils sont juste laissés devant une porte ou une mauvaise porte. Et ça, c'est régulier, là. On l'entend régulier. Les gens, ils se connaissent, puis ils disent, Hey, j'ai reçu mon colis, j'ai reçu ton colis, tu peux venir le chercher chez nous. Et donc, c'est des choses qui c'est pas sécurisé. Maintenant aussi, quand il y avait tu sais, nos facteurs, même avec les boîtes postales, ils voient les habitudes des citoyens et des fois avec nos populations qui sont vieillissantes. Ben, quand il arrive un événement malheureux, l'aptitude à la poste change parce que la personne n'y va plus et il faudrait qu'il y ait un système, tu sais, de détection, de dire, oh, ici on a une irrégularité dans. Parce que quand les facteurs passaient à la porte, ben, ils connaissaient le citoyen, ils connaissaient, c'était vraiment un rôle de service de proximité, un rôle je voudrais dire, les gens, des fois, vont se refermer sur eux, mais le facteur venait avoir cette interaction sociale-là avec. Et on voyait, oh, le balcon est plus déneigé. Donc, il y avait une sonnette. Puis nous, avec nos proximités dans nos villages ruraux, on recevait des commentaires des facteurs de, Hey, pouvez-vous aller voir à telle adresse, là, c'est plus, le balcon est plus déneigé, des choses comme ça. Puis ben souvent, on allait sauver des situations malheureuses et des fois, on était trop tard. Donc, mais c'était un service pour briser l'isolation sociale et aussi pour prévenir des difficultés plus grandes là, quand ils arrivaient. Donc, ça, on a perdu ce service-là avec les boîtes postales. Mais quand même, on voit qu'il y a des gens qui sont capables d'avoir des habitudes. Puis moi, je parle vraiment des personnes plus âgées, des personnes à mobilité réduite, des personnes qui ont des plus grands défis. Ben, quand il y a un changement d'habitude au niveau d'aller chercher la poste, des choses comme ça, ben, le facteur était souvent une personne super importante dans une collectivité, une personne qui rejoignait aussi puis qui brisait cet isolement social-là. Donc, c'est quelque chose que on comprend là, que ça coûte il y a des coûts à ça, mais il faut être conscient quand même de ce service de proximité qu'il y avait avec Post Canada. Et puis, bon, ben, dans les possibilités aussi, moi, je pourrais amener des fois des semaines de vaccination, des bureaux, des choses comme ça. Donc, peut-être aussi pourrait participer à avoir d'autres occasions de mettre à profit les installations de Post Canada, que je reviens à dire que la population a confiance en Post Canada et la voie sécuritaire. Et c'est pas comme ça avec les compétiteurs. Et aujourd'hui, d'avoir la confiance du public, c'est super important. Tu sais, la confiance du public envers Post Canada, envers la sécurité de Post Canada, n'a pas été mise en jeu et vraiment quelque chose qui a demeuré. Et dans plein d'autres choses avec les nouvelles technologies, la confiance du public, des fois, a tombé. Donc, c'est un point super important à garder. Est-ce que c'est bien, Rachel, comme ça? Richard?
Helpful. And that actually leads me wonderfully into my next question to you folks. And I'd like to start with Councillor Mendawar and then throw it back to Canada Post. Let's talk about working with municipalities on this transformation. Mayor St. Amour gave a lot of really great examples of the role of Canada Post in his community and other ways in which this transformation could help communities. But I'd like to hear from, Councillor Mendawar and John and Alexandre, just in terms of, one, how is Canada Post working with municipalities right now? And then to Councillor Mendawar, what is working and what could be improved in this transformation process, please?
Thank you, Rachel. I think I will leave John and Alexander to talk about what is working because they hear that piece. I'm going to concentrate on the change management or the gaps for change management when it comes to the consultation shortfalls that we are seeing as local governments. So one thing that we are hearing is, and this is to Canada Post, who picks the mailbox sites? And does the municipality get real input? Or do they just get a notification? Because we know that most of the consultation is already done, but we need to know, local government need to know, are we going to be consultant or is it going to be a veto power that then says this is the site that has been chosen and who is going to choose the sight lines, the snow clearance, the traffic, the accessibility, transit stops? Or are we just going to get a heads up after the decision is already made? This is something that definitely needs to be addressed. Also, we know that when you have a month-long address-to-address rollout, like what's happening right now, there's going to be a lot of questions. People are going to be wondering if they are seeing problems. Who do they go to? If there's vandalism, who do they report to? And is it going to be city by city? Or is a city is going to be assigned a point of contact that then will be the rollout for the escalation path for the transition. The other thing is Canada Post has been talking about the enhanced delivery accommodation program. What does that look like? Is it an opt-in? Is it going to require doctor's note from people? So these are things that we are hearing from residents that they're concerned about. And when it comes to keeping people informed every step of the way, what is that going to look like as well? Because a lot of local governments, I know my community included, some of the newspapers are closing. So you don't have newspapers anymore. But we also know that there's a digital gap when it comes to seniors. How is that going to be addressed? Because we don't want people to be left behind so that they don't know what the transition looks like. Lastly, I will talk on the sequencing piece for the post office closures. We need to know if the retail network changes that will be happening, if they'll be happening in parallel with the community closures. Because if it happens in parallel, then there's going to be that compound of change fatigue. And people are going to be, learning about the closure while they're learning about the new way of doing things. So we need to know how that's going to be sequenced as well. So this kind of highlights some of the gaps that we are hearing on the ground and hoping that you'll be able to address that from the change management perspective. Thank you.
Alexander, you want me to start and then I'll...
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. And this is all great input. We do have teams across the country dedicated to working with each municipality as we go through these changes. When there are, and for now, it's been community mailboxes as we continue to work on the retail side. But we have people that design, like we have the expertise in route development and how to best serve in terms of a mail perspective. But obviously each municipality has experts with city planning staff or town planning staff in terms of sight lines and where we should. So when we go through a change, we bring a proposal that we start first with the municipal leaders and then ask for permission to talk with the planning staff. And then we make adjustments as we go from there. Does this make sense? Because we're bringing the experience that we have, but we get that every community is going to be different, and we don't want it to be a cookie cutter or here's exactly where they're going to go. But to Normand's point, finding places that are convenient, located nearby, that people that will allow people to access the mail as they see fit. So, we want to work together. The box has got to go somewhere, but we work together to try and find the best solution for each community and often for each neighborhood. In terms of that, every box has the customer service number and things like that. If people notice that there's issues or if there's problems, but we do a number of communications as we go through the process. Different letters that people could receive that let them know that, hey, this is starting, and then here's where the box, and then there's a whole change management process to get people to, here's your key and all of that. And we get farther into that process, that's when the accommodation program kicks in, and then we start to work with, and then people can apply. We tried to make that as easy as possible and enhance that as much as possible. And that's now been in process for the last 10 years. We've minimized requirements and we're looking to make improvements. It's not just we don't just apply it. Obviously, people need to, based on their own circumstances, need to determine, because once they ask for accommodation, as Alexandra was talking about, it's a range of items from, people just need a box that's easier to get to because they want it lower, they want a tray because they can't reach in, or everything from, delivering their mail to their home once a week. So it's tailor-made for each individual. It can even be seasonal. If somebody is going to be having surgery and they're going to be laid up for, say 6 months, they can apply for that as well. So we've tried to make it as flexible so that it is inclusive, and people don't sign up for something and say, well, I didn't really need that. I just wanted this. So that's at a high level. I don't want to take up all the time, but Alexander, is there anything I missed out on that?
No, I think that's great, and obviously we're not perfect, right? And that's where I think the feedback is so important. And through, I guess that the you counselor and all counselors and city officials and the city planner, the early learnings are going to be incorporated going forward in the plan and how we work. I think on the retail side of things, you should expect same kind of experience where we're going to be way in advance of any changes. We're going to be very transparent about what we're going to do. We're going to reach out. We'll talk about this, get the feedback. So I think we're looking for something that's really really engaging over time, and we're willing to show the flexibility to make it right. So that's our engagement. Does not mean we're perfect, and that's kind of why we're here to communicate, but also receive the feedback.
Thank you. So before we move into the audience Q&A, I want to pose one last question to everyone on the panel, and this speaks to some of the questions already in the audience Q&A. So is other sources of revenue generation. So FCM and other organizations have called for Canada Post to pursue other revenue generating ideas, postal banking services, co-locating houses, and so on. What options are being considered by Canada Post? So that question to you, Alexandre and John, and then to Councillor Mandawar and Mayor Saint-Amour. Are there additional services that Canada Post could provide that would benefit your communities?
I'll go quick, and then first, our core business is delivering things. We deliver things to people, and we've been doing that for years. So we need to work to rebuild our core business as much as possible. Obviously, mail is going to continue to decline. It's important, but in terms of parcels, providing that service, because as we go with community mailboxes, we end up, if you're not home during the day or you're not able to pick up your mail, it's not sitting on your front porch, it's under lock and key. So, and then we've just negotiated with, CUPW to add weekend delivery. We were the only delivery company that wasn't delivering on weekends. We're going to start that in a few urban centers this Christmas, and then we'll look to where we can expand that. And then beyond that, Financial services, we're always looking to grow that. We have a new partnership in terms of moving from MoneyGram, but that will make it more available. And we're always looking at ways to do it. Becoming a chartered bank in Canada is incredibly complex and incredibly expensive. So that's not where we're looking to go in terms of full postal banking, but any services we can provide, especially in communities that don't have a bank and can have that access, and our places can be an access point. We're looking to grow that, but do it in areas that make sense, areas that we could successfully provide. So it's seen as a value add. Beyond that, we're adding, and we've added, and any small retailers in your area, reach out to us because we've just launched a site. It's just getting started, but it's called Canada Shops. And it's like, it's not like Amazon, I didn't say that, but it is a website where you can go to and you can buy from Canadian retailers across the country. We want that to grow. They'll ship through Canada Post, but we're also throwing out new services. If you've got a small business, and you can go on and you can create a new website because every small company, every small business that grows, especially in the rural and remote areas, we can deliver for them and we can help them grow their business. And that's the sweet spot. Like, we do work with the big customers, but it's the small customers that grow into medium-sized customers. That's what gives us the most pride, that we can see these Canadian companies. So we're trying to do things like that. And then other services, it's always, well, you guys have worked with other levels of government. It's an easy concept. Hey, you should bring all the services together. And then it gets super complicated when you start to work together. But there could be more and more of that because we have locations that nobody else does. And the more convenient we can make it for your citizens to provide more at the post office that we can do within reason, obviously we're going to look at that. So I hope that answers at least some of your question.
Mayor Santamore, I see you unmuted. Do you want to add on to that?
Oui, deux choses ce que j'entends, c'est que ce serait bien d'ajouter les services de bornes de recharge au niveau des emplacements dans toutes les communautés. Question que c'est un nouveau transport. Le véhicule électrique devient super important et une des questions que les citoyens se posent quand ils voyagent, c'est où je peux recharger de façon sécuritaire, de façon structurée. Le réseau de Post Canada est sécuritaire, structuré, donc c'est quelque chose qui pourrait être vraiment un ajout très, très important dans les municipalités rurales. Deuxièmement, le, je vais dire, le transport de colis structuré pour nos petites entreprises, nos PME. Ce serait important aussi que Post Canada ait des prix qui vont favoriser aussi l'utilisation du service Post Canada pour nos entrepreneurs qui peuvent envoyer à l'extérieur. Présentement, petite page de vie personnelle, j'utilisais du transport, puis j'avais une compagnie en tout cas de livraison, d'eau d'érable. Et puis, ça me coûtait moins cher envoyer un conteneur en Chine pour le faire livrer ici par les rabais que la Chine offrait que par Post Canada. Donc ça, c'est un problème pour nos petits entrepreneurs. C'est très cher d'utiliser le service de Post Canada pour la livraison. Et donc, c'est quelque chose que je crois que le Canada devrait aider beaucoup à Post Canada pour favoriser le transport et l'émancipation de nos petites PME. Donc, de réduire le transport, l'expédition des produits qu'on peut produire en région, qu'on peut produire en ville, qu'on peut produire au Canada. Donc, d'avoir un service coast to coast qui coûterait beaucoup moins cher, là.
Est-ce que je peux me permettre un point de clarification, peut-être une question, Normand, quand tu parles de service? Est-ce que particulièrement tu parles du service international à l'extérieur du Canada ou tu parles même des mouvements de biens internes, domestiques, Canada-Canada?
Je parle du bien interne, là,
Interne.
Canada-Canada.
OK. Parfait, merci.
I guess Councillor Mandawar?
Thank you. I wanted to give an example of what's happening in my community of Coquitlam. We have a new growth area, Northeast Coquitlam, which is growing rapidly. And as we look at the local retail outlets being closed, we are hoping that one of the services you're going to do is to look at those new subdivisions early enough so that a plan can be in place ahead of time, again, to avoid the service gaps. And I also wanted to share that the city of Coquitlam itself actually received an email saying that they'll be transitioning to a community mailbox. And we know that that probably was an error. But at the same time, it remains unclear of what it is that is being proposed for large organizations like local governments ourselves. As well, the local businesses and home-based e-commerce sellers, they're wondering what improved parcel service actually will look like. I know you touched on that to say there's going to be something, but it'll be good to co-create it with the local businesses, with the local governments, so that you can hear, because it's never going to be a one size fits all. It's going to be unique for every community. And I know it's hard to really tailor to every community, but those conversations I think you've done early enough can bring some solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mendor. So we have about 10 minutes left of the webinar, and I wanted to address some of the audience Q&A questions. So I'd actually like to pose to you what Nancy Ann Landry has put in the chat. So they ask, will the modernization of post offices be carried out differently depending on the needs of each rural community, or will it be implemented uniformly for all post offices in rural areas?
Thanks, and that's a great question. You'll probably get tired of hearing this over the next few, but we're not looking at a cookie cutter approach. We get that every community is different. What we're actively working on with the government now is, and there will be opportunities for public consultation, is here's what the guardrails look like. Here is how we're going to, service areas. So it means that, where we will focus on what I was talking about earlier, that balance will be provided. So in terms of rural and all that, and you guys know more than I do, defining what rural is and what rural isn't gets more and more complicated and can be somewhat subjective. So we need to find that, because there's never been a definition of rural that we've ever been able to use. There was a rural moratorium, and that was all that was a spreadsheet from 1994, so maybe not Excel back then, but it was just a list of post offices that were just don't touch. And moratoriums in government don't age well, and it meant that we have a bunch of sites that I keep saying that, but we're out of balance. So we're paying to keep there's parts of, and not just picking on urban centers, but, in Coquitlam, you're growing. So over time, 30 years, areas that were once rural are no longer rural. So if anyone's familiar with Richmond Hill in Toronto, that's still classified as rural on the list because it was back in 1994. So it means that we can't make changes, but you can look and see the one at the Shoppers Drug Mart or another corporate, or you can see that. Obviously, we need to focus there. And then as we look to rural, remote, and all that, if we can free up that capital, because we have to manage we have to be financially sustainable, then we can look at how can we do a better job, because we know there are many communities where the hours at the post office, because we've had to reduce costs because it's just not being used as much, it's maybe 9 to 12, and then it's closed for lunch, and then it's open till 5. Well, that's not a modern and convenient service. So how can we get better at stuff like that? It won't be perfect, but we want to hear from the communities as well as we look at them, and that will be very much. I know everybody wants to know exactly, but there's still a lot of work going on with the government just to set the guardrails. But once we have that, it's going out and sharing that, people having a chance to have people consult, and then saying, here's what we are hoping to do within your community, and then working together and figuring that out, understanding that our goal is to try and meet the current needs of what Canadians are looking for. Most of the transactions, as you know, they come into the post office to drop an item off. It might be a return. There's not a lot, there's no finances, there's no financial transaction that goes on. It's dropping off or picking up. So it's trying to manage that, but how do we, if this is what Canadians need, especially within each community, how do we better provide that? Because we're dealing with post offices, because the moratorium went in place since 1994. Some of those post offices were built for the needs of the 60s and 70s. Things have changed so much. You just look around your own communities and how things have changed, and we now have the opportunity, but modernization is going to happen over several years. It's not going to be a mass change that'll happen just overnight. We need to go community by community and try and get this right. We're not going to be perfect, as Alexandra points out, but we want you, and this is helpful today, point out when we're dropping the ball. Point out when, here's what we're seeing, and you come to us and say that's not going to work. Understanding, though, if we can't make the post office sustainable, it only becomes more and more challenging to provide service to all.
So Mayor Saint-Amour, I see you have unmuted yourself. Did you want to respond to that? Yes, please go ahead.
Bien. Oui, les bureaux de poste en milieu rural, et moi je vais parler des vrais bureaux de poste ruraux, là, ceux qui sont encore ruraux. Des fois, le bureau de poste le plus proche est à 1 heure de route là, de nos citoyens qui sont permanents, qui sont pas seulement des villégiateurs, des touristes, là, nos permanents qui résident à l'année. Et le fait de fermer un bureau de poste rural fait qu'il faut que tu ailles dans une ville-centre qui, elle, peut être à 1h30 de voyagement. Et donc, moi, je crois que de garder les bureaux de poste ruraux, l'ensemble, mais peut-être d'y augmenter des services administratifs du gouvernement canadien. Exemple, un renouvellement de passeport, des choses qui devraient être faites plus simplement. Peut-être pas un nouveau passeport, mais un renouvellement. Des choses simples, et je ne peux pas en faire une liste des services administratifs canadiens, mais on pourrait devenir un point de, le bureau de poste pourrait devenir des points de service du gouvernement du Canada, quelque chose qui répondrait énormément à notre population, car je le dis quand même, là, 1 heure, 1h30, il y a une différence, une grande différence pour aller à notre bureau de poste. Pour, donc, et même les services Canada, souvent, vont être juste dans les grandes villes, qui sont nos villes de centralité, mais toutes nos petites régions, nos villes nos municipalités plus petites, ben, eux sont loin des services de Service Canada. Donc, il y a une belle opportunité d'avoir un Poste Canada et je trouve vraiment important dans le monde aujourd'hui, c'est de garder cette confiance. Donc, les changements qui sont apportés à Post Canada, il faut qu'ils soient faits quand même de façon tranquille pour ne pas venir briser la confiance que la population a envers Post Canada. Merci.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Santamar. So we only have about 3 minutes left, and I do want to get to one last audience question before we go. So please keep it answers fairly short. But one of the attendees had asked to touch a little on what Councillor Mendawar mentioned, the aspect of irregular climate, floods, snow, and extreme weather in Canada has been increasing. What is the plan for the transformation to community mailboxes and third parties that have to clean and clear the sites? In their community, sometimes take days or a week to clear the site. What will Canada Post have to do with the consultation with the diligent third parties? This also speaks right to the cost to municipalities in terms of maintaining those sites as well. So, Alexandra, John, please.
Yeah, maybe John, I can take this one. I think on the cost side, it's very, very clear. The cost of the hardware itself, the cost of the installation, the cost of the slab there, the cost of the prepping of the site, the cost of the maintenance of the site is really for Canada Post. So I think we've got to be clear. We're supporting the cost of the installation and the maintenance of those sites. There's no question about that. We see this interaction in the rest of Canada. It's very, very important where, sometimes there's going to be graffitis on the box and people, our own, I guess, operators notice these things, they report, we show up and we clean it up, right? So the system's got to work. We see a lot of also citizens that kind of reach out to us and say, you know what, my mailbox today, there's this and there's something that's got to be done. And internally we take care of this. And the local operations team is very, very proud to try to be as responsive as we can. Once again, not perfect, but it's our job to do it, and we try to do the best we can. That's for certain. I'll stop there for the interest of time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So given that we have 2 minutes left, I will throw it back to my colleague Evan to provide some concluding remarks. Thank you very much.
So before we wrap, folks, and that is unfortunately all the time we have today, but I just want to give a big thank you to Councillor Mandawar, Rachel, Mayor St. Amour, John, and Alexandra for this important conversation. This is an ongoing dialogue, and we certainly appreciate your time here today to answer questions and shed some light on some of these important issues to municipalities and their constituents. As mentioned at the top today, there will be a recording of today's conversation available and posted to fcm.ca in the coming days. This will be sent to all registered attendees by email. And for now, we look ahead to the 2026-2027 FCM Collective Webinar Series, which will get underway full steam ahead in September. For now, enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you all for participating, and be well.